And now for the introduction of our at-large candidates, Kelly Dunn and TJ Frain.
Thank you. Thank you to the Northern Iowa Student Government and the other organizations for sponsoring this debate and for creating a public environment for candidates to discuss issues so important to Cedar Falls. My name is Kelly Dunn. I am currently serving on the City Council and I am seeking re-election to my seat. Thank you for electing me 1 year ago. I appreciate the opportunity to serve the city that I love. I have lived in Cedar Falls since 1996. I attended the University of Northern Iowa and graduated from Hawkeye Community College. I am a nurse and work to serve the patients of Unity Point Clinic here in Cedar Falls. What drove me to run for council a little over a year ago was my concern for folks that were running based on emotions and misinformation. I feel that it is vital that the leaders in Cedar Falls are willing to gather data, engage in civil debate, and ask questions, and to learn in order to make the best decisions for Cedar Falls. I also feel it is vital to be forward-thinking, to think outside of the box, and to have a vision for what we want Cedar Falls to look like into the future. The vision I see is that of diversity, a place where folks continue to be safe, a place where common sense decisions are data-driven, a place where people want to live, work, and play. Thank you, and I look forward to your vote on November 2nd.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for putting on the event. It's good. Who would have thought a year ago we'd be able to have something like this? So it's awesome to see stuff like this come back around. I'm TJ Frain, and I've been in the Cedar Valley for over 30 years, in Cedar Falls for the last 6. We moved, my wife and 2 sons moved to Cedar Falls for a variety of reasons. The schools, the utilities, just the overall well-being of the community, young, vibrant, active. We wanted to participate in that. And since day one, I have been participating in Cedar Falls civics. I got my interest in civics, goes way back to 8th grade social studies from a teacher of mine, and looking at presidential elections, and how exciting how excited that was to an 8th grader is awesome. I'm service-minded. I've been a police officer in Waterloo for over 12 years. Just about ready to finish up year 12. So I'm used to problem solving with complete strangers in some of the most stressful situations, having to go in and help them and encourage them to basically come to a consensus and solve their own problems. So I think that's important on city council is the government's never, city council is never going to solve your problems for you. What we need to do is be able to come together, offer solutions, and have citizens in the community solve their own problems. And I look forward to representing the at-large seat November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, so as we ask the questions, for the first one, I'm going to start with Ms. Dunn, and then for the second one, so we'll just alternate back and forth then. We continue to see economic impact to Cedar Falls from the COVID pandemic. What role should the city play in recovery from the global pandemic, and what is your plan to help the businesses and residents of Cedar Falls?
Great question. So I feel like there's many factors that are going on right now because of COVID-19. There's economic impact. Although I don't know that it totally started with the pandemic, we don't have a workforce to support the businesses that we need to keep those businesses running at all hours. And we have there's a mental health aspect also that's kind of intertwined to all of that. I feel like there's many factors that, childcare. Childcare has been, even before the pandemic, has been harder and harder to find quality childcare in our city. And in all over Iowa. We have folks that are working in those roles that aren't making a living wage. And in that case, we don't have enough child care providers to even provide the care to begin with, making it hard for folks to go back to work and support the businesses that so very much need it.
Thank you.
COVID impact obviously has impacted our local workforce to degrees that we won't even know for years to come. It's very unfortunate that we're seeing mom and pop shops all along Main Street, the Hill, and the like, help wanted signs everywhere, or not being able to work hours and keep business open because they don't have the workforce. So one of the things that I think we should be doing is our biggest workforce for part-time work, the hospitality fields and whatnot, are UNI students. So if we can grab a hold of them when they come onto campus, get them engaged in the community, I think they're more than willing probably to take those jobs, or at least help alleviate some of those small business issues we have. Kelly talked about the mental health. I mean, we see that all the time. It's caused great stress on everybody, the uncertainty. So we need to be looking at that, as well as celebrating our downtown and getting people to come out again through celebration and positivity, so they know that coming out to Main Street and spending their hard-earned dollars is going to impact everything greatly.
The second question goes to Mr. Frain to begin with. How do you think the city of Cedar Falls should establish its priorities? Describe the process you feel would be most advantageous for setting goals and priorities.
I think the city does a good job with the CIP process, the goal-setting process. The issue I see with that process is we need to get the people of Cedar Falls more engaged at step one, which is the goal setting. Then comes the capital improvements, because what I see and what I've talked to people about is all that discussion goes on, except people aren't as engaged until it comes up as an agenda item. So we have failed in that regard to get people engaged at the very beginning so they can see the entire process play out. So we don't have people who are upset coming to council meetings because that item has come up on the agenda.
I agree. Our goal-setting process, it's a beautiful thing. If you've never watched it, you do have to come in person, but it is the vision for our city for the next 5 years. How do we prioritize things? I feel like, especially after this year and a half or almost 2 years now, finding out what things, first we need a basic safe infrastructure that covers and takes care of all of us. But we also need to realize what projects affect the most people and how do they affect those people. For instance, our recreation. I think we can all agree in the last 18 months to 2 years that parks have been vital for our physical health and our mental health. And they've paid for themselves over and over again. So quality of life projects, although not always favored by some folks, are so incredibly important, especially to attract people to live here.
So what is the unrealized value then of the Cedar Falls UNI partnership? And to take it just one step further, I'd like you to specifically talk about maybe the College Hill area.
Thanks. Great question. Okay, so first, the College Hill neighborhood is the neighborhood that you first see when you come to visit UNI. It was the neighborhood that I fell in love with. First, I fell in love with North Cedar, and then I got up to the hill and spent many days of my youth working in my aunt and uncle's restaurant up there. That made me want to come to Cedar Falls. There was diversity, at least to a small town farm kid. There was diversity, there was arts, there was vibrancy. So to get people to come and hopefully stay, I fully support and have supported the College Hill Vision Plan, and I look forward to implementing the parts of that vision. I also have served on the Racial Equity Task Force. A lot of times we're talking about what can we do as a city to help with diversity, equity, inclusion. UNI is already doing that. We need to reach out and partner with them.
UNI is our city's biggest employer, so we need to, and with enrollment, we need to make sure we're tracking that and keeping an eye on that, because that's going to impact levels of employment. I would like to see is I mentioned earlier, getting those UNI students personally invested in the community. That's a hard thing to do as a young adult, first time moving out of the house, going to college. So as a city and as a community, Community Main Street, the city, College Hill districts and partnerships have to come together and get those students to personally invest. Once we get them personally invested, I think that they'll see the great community we live in, and they'll want to be a part of it for years to come. The College Hill district gets, is what those kids come to do. They come to school and they want to see what's going on around it. Where we fail a little bit is in Met Transit, because college kids may not have a car, so we want to get them to these places. We want to get them downtown. We want to get them to the mall. We want to get them to Viking Road, so they're seeing everything we have to offer. So we need to be doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question goes to Mr. Frain to begin with. Cedar Falls enjoys one of the lowest tax rates in the state and is an economically diverse tax base. There is always great concern about budgets and spending around any election. How do you differentiate between an investment and expense? How important is it that the community understand when investments are made versus when spending occurs? And maybe are there any other projects on the books right now that you fully support or do not support?
When I think about investments, I think about quality of life issues, things that cost money that maybe don't make money, but in the long term they do. When you think of like the Cedar River project that's coming, that's an investment by the city. That's a quality of life issue that's going to bring people from all over the community, or all over the Cedar Valley, all over the state, into Cedar Falls. So that's where you see your economic impact, is when you get people to come here, enjoy those amenities, spend their money. So we see an impact that way. When I think of expenses, roads, those sort of things, the things we have to do to maintain the city that we know are coming, year-to-date stuff. But investments, like I said, quality of life issues. The River Project is a great example. A place to play park, that was a private deal, but now the city, got invested in it. Now it's a city park. So those things. Thanks.
I feel like what gets people to come here and stay here are our incredible infrastructure and services that we provide to the folks of Cedar Falls. Those are the investments that people, you don't see the immediate fruits of that, but you sure do appreciate it when you need it. The other investments, quality of life, yes, that's great. Parks, the River Project, all the recreation opportunities we have in our city are important. Also supporting our College Hill vision plan and our downtown vision plan, so that people want to not only visit here, but to live, work, and play here, and spend money in our community, which grows our tax base.
All right, let's get into the PSO questions. What, if anything, do you see as current deficiencies in the public safety model?
We have a great savings in the cost savings. We have a less use of overtime, and we have 24 folks that serve full-time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, who are fully trained like any other person that would serve as a firefighter in the state of Iowa. And if needed, they're also fully certified as a police officer. So if they need to, which I think that's a common misinterpretation in this city, is people think that those folks are bouncing back and forth every day, and that's simply not true. But if they need to, they can serve in that role as well. Did I answer the question?
If you don't believe there are any deficiencies in the program, then yes.
I think anything, as other folks have said today, any program or, in my job, we're constantly reviewing the ways we can do better. I mean, anything needs to be reviewed.
Thank you.
I think the rollout the last couple of years has been extremely poor. We've seen as much as organizational charts come out while we still have full-time firefighters without them on it. And of course, everybody saw the forecasting that was going on. And when we talk about cross-training, everybody should see value in cross-training or the ability to cross-train. However, you can only wear one hat at a time. You cannot be both a police officer and a firefighter at the same time. It's just impossible. You're either one or the other. So I think that the information being put out is a little bit misconstrued when we talk about having 63 firefighters. Then if that were the case, we would have 0 cops, because you can't be both at the exact same time. We see value in cross-training. I just don't think it should be a forced issue. Right now, we have all across the country recruiting in law enforcement is down. So I wonder if maybe we're losing out on good recruits for the fire side because people simply just don't want to be in law enforcement right now.
Can I rebut that? We don't have people wearing both hats at the same time. We have folks serving on fire, and we have folks serving on the police side. We have separate police and fire. That is a common misconception in our city, and it makes people feel unsafe, and it's simply not true.
Please.
If I may, carrying firefighter gear in your car and getting out of your police officer's uniform, taking your gun belt off, and putting on a fire bunker gear makes you a firefighter. It's taken away that ability to be a police officer. All your equipment is locked in your car. So no, you simply cannot. You're losing one in favor of the other. There are times where that may be warranted, but it's just simply untrue to think that we can cross-train individuals and say, they can do both jobs.
This issue has obviously created some level of incivility and discord in the city over the last several years. What would you do to educate and maybe unify the city on this issue? Mr. Frain, please.
I think the rollout, like I mentioned earlier, was awful. We saw Public Employee Relations Board rulings come out that are currently being litigated with some pretty unfortunate quotes in them towards the entire process. I think the rollout was poor, and I think that there's other ways that we can get the public to understand, and we don't need to be mandating cross-training. I think that's an issue. Like I mentioned, kind of recruiting being a tool. We had our public safety director quoted as saying, I can only hire people willing to cross-train. It kind of came off maybe a little bit as an excuse, but it's reality of where Cedar Falls is at. And if we didn't have that, like I said, maybe we're missing out on some good firefighter candidates.
I think we just simply, unfortunately, this is a time where we have to keep repeating over and over and over again the facts and the data and combat the misinformation that's out there. I do feel like the city itself has been getting less gun shy of coming forward. I feel like this issue went full bore. That the city was maybe a little hesitant and wanted to let it die down a bit. But I feel like they have been more active on the media, at supporting our firefighters and supporting our police officers who deserve all the respect in the world as they serve our city. I also encourage folks, because I think the best thing you can do is go out to the public safety building and talk and see these folks work and in their environment. I think you'll have a different opinion.
Yes, please.
I think it's unfortunate that we put those hardworking people, and I know a lot of them both professionally and personally, we put them in a seemingly lose-lose situation to try to get something accomplished, to eliminate a fire department or fire union, if you will. We put them in a lose-lose situation, and that's been detrimental to them.
So then would you advocate going back to completely separate fire and police departments?
I think doing so would create a greater danger at this point in time to completely separate the two and start going back the other way. One of the things I talked about was never engaging in revenge politics. Going and saying, because something happened years ago, then I'm angry and I'm just going to cut it and get rid of it. I don't want to endanger the community in that way. I think there's other ways we can make it better. We have good cross-training folks that want to do it, and then we have some that we're just forced to do it. I don't think we do ourselves a service by forcing people to cross-train.
Again, we have separate fire and separate police in Cedar Falls. No one is forced to work here, and over the past couple of years, we've kept hiring folks. If you know, ride-alongs and shadowing these folks can do a world of good to educate yourself. And listening to the people who are actually doing the job, of course, you know, no one likes when people lose their job, especially when they're the people you work with every day. But I just encourage you to reach out to the Public Safety Department.
Thank you.
With diversity and equity issues, you know, existing in Cedar Falls, how should the city respond if elected? How committed will you be to following through on the recommendations of the Racial Equity Task Force that are coming out soon? Mr. Frain, if you would, please.
I think we're never going to know the true impact or the true diversity problems we have until people are comfortable coming out and being themselves and talking about it. So we need to make sure that we're getting those people to the point where they're talking about the issues they're having, maybe not internalizing them, but getting them comfortable enough to externalize them so we know exactly what's going on, and then cooperating with them to solve the problem. I think the Racial Task Force, I think one of the things we failed at was proper funding for the Human Rights Commission. We just spent $15,000 to have a mediator for the Equity Task Force. That's 10 years worth of human rights budget. $1,500 we've been budgeting for the Human Rights Commission for years. And using the 2010 census, that's only 53 cents per racial minority. So I think this problem has been boiling for a while, and it's because we haven't been looking at our Human Rights Commission as the entity that it should be.
First, I can speak for 100% knowing that we have engaged with our Human Rights Commission, and we have, as a council, asked them if they need more in their budget. I sat here as we asked that. I do know those folks have been working hard and are coming up with an agenda to hopefully engage with the city council in what do we need exactly to support them in their purpose. As far as what I sit on the Racial Equity Task Force, so of course I'm going to support every bit of it. We've poured hours upon hours of time and energy into it. Yes, we had a facilitator, and to have hundreds of years of systemic racism and spend $15,000, I think it was a good investment. My opinion is what's going to make a difference. I always say that a lot of kids that live in Cedar Falls, I guess I'm not a kid anymore, but people who came to Cedar Falls are kids like me, farm kids that didn't grow up with the diversity. Education is going to be key.
I think one of the commonalities between the last two topics is that many citizens at least have a perception that they aren't being listened to, or that they don't have an opportunity to participate in the decision-making process. How can we do better moving forward, making the citizens of Cedar Falls feel like they're part of the process and make them feel like they're being heard when it comes to these important topics?
First, I want to say that you know, I do feel like the city does a great job in getting information out to folks. We have a Currents magazine. We have a spot on our website where you can sign up for emails of any topic that you want. It'll come right to your inbox. We have social media campaigns. But when I do think about what can be done to help folks, because it does seem to be a topic that people bring up, that they think things just all of a sudden happen when that's simply not true. Maybe we need a campaign with our city staff, perhaps our Amanda, who does our media work, to help walk folks through the process of how things happen in the city of Cedar Falls, and when exactly or where exactly they might look so that they know where the information is at the very beginning, because nothing happens fast in this town.
I see communication as a two-way road. It's not enough to sit and wait for constituents to reach out to their elected officials or city staff. It's got to be city staff and elected officials going to their constituents with issues. Like I mentioned before, we do a poor job in the initial budgeting process of getting people involved. It's not until that agenda item comes up that you see a room full of people. And perception is a little bit reality. I look at it as a book, Extreme Ownership, is knowing, if somebody says you're failing in a regard, is just owning it and correcting it, looking at it and them saying, we don't feel listened to. We may have put out flyers and currents, but is it enough? We need to be looking at how we can do better. If somebody's telling us we're doing a bad job, we need to look at how we can improve.
And to wrap up.
No, Kelly has a good point.
I'd like to point out that there is a difference between not listening and simply not agreeing. I feel like that's something that exacerbates division in our community. And it seems like such a simple thing, but folks think that they're not heard when someone does hear, but they simply don't agree. And that's a reality. We don't always agree.
I've actually had this exact conversation with one council member, for somebody to say people just don't understand has been written off as people disagreeing. I've actually had a council member apologize for that behavior before, so we can't write off disagreement as lack of understanding.
And we're up to closing remarks. Mr. Frain, would you like to begin, please?
I appreciate everybody's time coming out and watching on the TV. I think we live in a great community. Everybody wants what's best for it. People just have varying opinions on what that looks like and what that is going to look like for years to come. I think everybody wants a community for their kids, their family, and everybody to come visit. We just have different visions of what that looks like. I look at proactive problem solving. I mentioned it before. It's kind of the name of the game in my job, is to get and solve problems for complete strangers or encourage them to solve their own problems. And I plan to take that to City Hall as an elected official for the at-large seat November 2nd. Thank you.
Again, I want to thank the groups for sponsoring this event. And I also want to thank Mr. Frain for sitting here and engaging and putting himself out there. It does take great courage to put yourself out in this arena. I have a strong loyalty to Cedar Falls. There's an old saying, if you want something done, you give it to a busy person. I am a busy person. I have proven I can get things done in this role as a council person for the past year by being present, willing to listen and to learn, and to make data-driven decisions. I care about the future of Cedar Falls. I want to leave my kids and their friends a city we can be proud of, one that they may choose to call home and live in and work in and raise their own families someday. Thank you, and I look forward to your vote on November 2nd.
Thank you both very much.